Let's start where everyone started, the Met Gala. The 2026 edition happened last night, and by every tradition of the celebrity industrial complex, it should be the only thing anyone is talking about this morning. Queen Bey returned after a decade away from those stairs. Nicole Kidman sat in the co-chair seat. The theme, Fashion is Art, was the kind of open-ended invitation that usually produces at least 3 iconic images and a dozen think pieces by sunrise. Every stylist in Hollywood had been locked in a room for months. Every photographer knew their exact position on the carpet. The machine was oiled, loaded, and fired up. Tickets cost $75,000 a head. Last year's event raised $31 million. Beyoncé, Doja Cat, Lisa from Blackpink, Gwendoline Christie, the guest list was a who's who of who's worth a fortune. And yet, by the time the sun came up over New York, style journalists weren't writing about the Met Gala, they were writing about a different event, a different carpet, a completely different girl. Her name is Eala. As of this week, she's world number 42. In doubles, she just hit a career-high 88, confirmed Monday while she was packing for Rome. Right now, she's on the ground in the Italian capital, warming up for a first-round match against Magdalena Frech. Win that, and she's looking at Wang Xinyu. Win that, and suddenly a top 32 seeding before Roland Garros isn't a dream, it's a math problem with a solution. By every traditional measure, Eala is a tennis player in the middle of a working clay season. She's 20 years old. She trains at the Rafa Nadal Academy. She's the first Filipina to crack the WTA top 50 in the Open era. That's her day job. But 2 weeks ago, in Madrid, she walked into a room full of the greatest athletes on the planet wearing something that had nothing to do with tennis and everything to do with who she is. Let me take you back to April 21st, the Laureus World Sports Awards, the Palacio de Cibeles in Madrid, one of those European buildings that makes you understand why some cities are called cathedrals of light. This is the sporting world's Oscars. Carlos Alcaraz took home Sportsman of the Year. Aryna Sabalenka won Sportswoman. Novak Djokovic and Eileen Gu hosted the whole night. And into that room, that glittering, powerful, hyper-competitive room, walked a 20-year-old Filipina tennis player who, 1 week earlier, had picked up the phone and called her uncle. She told him she needed a dress, not just any dress, a Filipiniana, something that said exactly where she came from, in a room full of people who have spent their entire careers representing entire nations. Her uncle is Rajo Laurel, celebrated Filipino fashion designer. He had never made a custom piece for his niece before. This would be the first. He had 7 days. Most couture houses take months. Rajo took 7 days, and what he delivered stopped a room that is genuinely very difficult to stop. The gown was blush beige chiffon, floor length, strapless, soft pleats across the bodice. The waist cut was a specific personal request from Alex herself. Over it, a removable piña bolero with the signature turnip butterfly sleeves. The piña fabric is woven from pineapple leaf fibers. It is one of the most distinctly Filipino textiles in existence. Centuries of cultural weight are folded into every thread. At 1.75 meters tall, Eala wore it the way the garment was always meant to be worn. Rajo himself said her height made her a perfect fashion mannequin. The chiffon column moved with her like water. The bolero came on and off throughout the night. Every time she removed it, the cameras followed. And here, where something strange, something genuinely unprecedented happened. WTA players started posting about it, not one or two, multiple players across the tour, not tepid, performative praise, either genuine delight. They were impressed. That is a specific kind of reaction. Tennis players do not typically flood social media over what another player wore to an award ceremony. They did this time. Andy Roddick, Grand Slam champion, one of the most respected voices in American tennis media, acknowledged it. He didn't frame it as a curiosity. He spoke about it as a known fact about the current state of the sport. Eala has a following that operates at a scale the tennis world hasn't seen from a player at her ranking level in a very long time. Her Philippine fan base travels to her matches. They show up in numbers. They follow every tournament, every outfit, every Instagram caption. She knows it. She said once on camera, "I thought, how many of them are probably praying for me to win, so I really had to give everything I got." And after Madrid, after the awards, after the clay season ground forward, after she withdrew from the Catalonia Open to rest ahead of bigger battles, she posted a photo album on Instagram. No long explanation, no breakdown of what happened, just 4 words, a loud life in soft lighting. 4 words that somehow described everything. The red carpet, the room, the dress, the noise that followed, without spelling any of it out. That is not accidental, that is a specific kind of cultural intelligence, the kind that can't be bought or strategized or reverse engineered. Now let's talk about the Met Gala again. The theme was Fashion is Art. The dress code invited guests to express their own relationship to fashion as an embodied art form. That is an extraordinarily open brief. It was designed to produce interpretation, creativity, individual expression. And it did. Beyoncé showed up. Nicole Kidman showed up. Venus Williams co-chaired. The host committee included Sabrina Carpenter and Doja Cat and Elizabeth Debicki. It was, by any reasonable standard, a triumph of spectacle. But here's the thing nobody expected. 2 weeks before that night, a tennis player in a Piña Bolero had already answered that question more completely than most people expected anyone to answer it. She wasn't trying to answer the Met Gala's brief, she was just being exactly who she is. The Filipiniana she wore isn't a costume. It's a national dress with living cultural roots. The turn of butterfly sleeves aren't a stylistic flourish. They're a specific architectural feature of a garment that Filipino women have worn for generations. When Alex said on Instagram that she doubted there were many pieces of clothing that made a Filipina feel more beautiful than a Filipiniana, that wasn't marketing language. That was a statement about identity. She also described it as a quiet nod to where I come from and what I carry when I step into rooms like those. Read that sentence again? She said quiet nod. A room full of the world's greatest athletes hosted by Djokovic and Eileen Gu, and she called her cultural statement quiet. That's not modesty for show. That's someone who has been carrying this her entire life and simply decided the room was big enough to show it. Fashion editors noticed, not in a passing way, in the way that editors notice when something arrives without asking for attention and commands it anyway. The conversation about what she wore in Madrid was still running when the Met Gala red carpet opened in New York. Style journalists who had been assigned to cover the Met were simultaneously fielding questions about a Filipiniana from 2 weeks prior. That is not normal. That does not happen because of a PR campaign. It happens because the image itself has cultural staying power. And that brings us to the word desperate, because I don't use it lightly, I use it pointedly. When something organically commands more sustained cultural attention than a $31 million event with Beyoncé at the center, the people whose job it is to manufacture those moments take notice fast. Filipino designers who had been operating in a space of growing, but still niche international recognition started receiving inquiries. The Filipiniana moved from cultural artifact to reference point in conversations happening in rooms that previously hadn't asked the question. To copy something, you first have to acknowledge it's worth copying. That acknowledgement is what happened. So let's pull back to the tennis court, because Eala is not a fashion figure taking a break to play tennis. She is a tennis player who happens to carry cultural weight that most players at her level simply do not have. Right now, as this script exists, she is in Rome. The Italian Open, a WTA 1000 event, one of the two biggest clay court tournaments before Roland Garros. She walks onto that court as world number 42, a two-spot climb confirmed Monday after the Madrid Open results settled. In doubles, she's at a career-high 88, up 13 spots from where she stood just 2 weeks ago after reaching the second round in Madrid, alongside Turkish partner Zeynep Sönmez. Her first-round opponent in Rome is Magdalena Frech of Poland, currently ranked 45. They have never faced each other before. If she wins, Wang Xinyu waits in the next round. That rematch carries history. Wang beat her at the ASB Classic semifinals in New Zealand back in January 5-7, 7-5, 6-4, a three-set battle, close enough that a second meeting could look very different. But the clay season has been genuinely difficult. Former British number 1 Greg Rusedski flagged it publicly. He identified a trend of heavy defeats in her recent matches that needs to stop. Losing to Mertens in Madrid 2-6, 1-6 after beating Pavlyuchenkova 6-3, 6-3 in the first round, that is exactly the kind of inconsistency Rusedski was pointing at. One round, she's dominant. The next, she's outclassed. That gap is the specific thing she needs to close before Paris. Roland Garros starts May 24th. She turns 21 on May 23rd. Her French Open debut as a professional last year ended in the round of 128 against Emiliana Arango of Colombia. She has only 20 ranking points to defend across both the Italian Open and Roland Garros combined. That means every win from here adds net positive points to her total. The mathematics of her ranking situation are actually favorable heading into the French Open. She doesn't need to outperform history, she needs to get past the first round. Getting into the top 32 would earn her a seeded position at Grand Slams. That single threshold changes everything. It means avoiding the very top players until the later rounds. It means a structurally easier path to the second week. It means the difference between being a player who competes at slams and a player who genuinely threatens at them. She's 11 spots away. Rome and Paris are both live opportunities. This is the context that sits underneath the fashion conversation. Eala didn't wear a Filipiniana to the Laureus Awards as a distraction from tennis. She wore it because it was true. And because at 20 years old, having trained at the Rafa Natal Academy in Mallorca since 2018, having grown up watching Manny Pacquiao turn boxing matches into national holidays back in Quezon City, having hit on court with Rafa himself in the off-season, and come off that practice session physically exhausted by the intensity of a retired champion, she understands exactly what it means to carry something bigger than yourself into a room. Natal's work ethic shaped her. She said it herself. His intensity never goes away, and feeling it firsthand was something she described as genuinely great. That's not a quote given for content. That's someone who has absorbed what sustained excellence at the highest level actually requires. Her own words about her mental approach during this difficult clay stretch say the same thing in a different way. When things are going bad, it's not as bad as it seems, and when things are going well, it's also not as good as it seems. Staying humble but also hungry, humble but hungry. Allowed life in soft lighting, a quiet nod to where she comes from. These are not the phrases of someone who stumbled into cultural significance. They are the phrases of someone who has been thinking carefully about what she represents on court and off it for a very long time. That's what the fashion world encountered 2 weeks before the Met Gala 2026. Not a celebrity in a designer gown performing identity for a camera. A 20-year-old athlete, the first Filipina to crack the WTA top 50 in the entire Open era, wearing her culture on her body in a room where the greatest athletes on earth were watching, and meaning every single thread of it. Hollywood had the budget, it had the infrastructure, it had Beyoncé and a decade of anticipation and $75,000 tickets and the full force of Vogue behind it. Eala had 7 days, one uncle, and something none of that money can manufacture. And the morning after the Met Gala, the conversation still hadn't moved on. It was still in Madrid, still on that carpet, still on that dress. That's not a style moment, that's a cultural takeover, and it happened without a single Hollywood publicist involved. The clay season is heating up, Rome is live, Paris is 2 weeks out, and wherever Eala goes next on the court and far beyond it, the room will have no choice but to turn and look. Drop your prediction for her Italian Open run in the comments. Every single one gets read.